Discover the sinister secrets, 13 spine-chilling Christian art pieces that haunt the soul. Julie sat hunched over her laptop, the glow illuminating her tired face as the sun dipped below the horizon. Her heart raced as she read the article, each word sending a shiver down her spine. Eerie beauty in painted saints, each with grotesque features and a history steeped in tragedy. The piece claimed these artworks were more than just visual, they were cursed, each brushstroke woven with despair. She felt a compulsion to unearth the dark tales, unaware that her exploration would awaken something sinister in her home. As twilight sank into evening, Julie's suburban Ohio house was filled with the rhythmic sounds of cicadas, a comforting backdrop to her frantic clicking. She gathered printed images of the described artworks, each depicting saints with eyes that seemed to glisten and watch. One image, in particular, gripped her, an ethereal saint with disturbingly lifelike eyes. She felt an odd sense of dread but couldn't resist the allure of the story behind it. That night, she hung the painting on her living room wall, its gaze fixed ominously on the doorway. The moment she stepped back, an unsettling chill enveloped the room. The eyes of the saint seemed to follow her, a prickly sensation sparking across the nape of her neck. She shook her head, dismissing it as her imagination. It was just fatigue, she told herself, but deep down, something twisted inside her. That night, the whispers began. Soft, scratchy murmurings that tickled her ears, so light it felt like a dream, but it wasn't. Julie. The whispers called, her name echoing through the stillness of the house. Weeks flew by, the whispers growing louder, mixing with shadows that crept in the corners of her vision. Am I losing it? She wondered, tossing and turning, the memories of mundane days swirling with every fleeting flicker in the dusk. Conversations with friends turned awkward whenever she mentioned it. They told her she was just stressed, a single mother, teaching art, coping with too much. You should take a break, they'd murmur, eyes filled with concern. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Determination ignited in Julie's gut, she could feel it swirling like a tempest. Digging through the articles late at night, she began to connect the dots between the paintings and the grim fate of their owners. Betrayal, blood. One thread led her to a well-respected church leader in her neighborhood. Could he be involved? The thought sliced through her mind, filling her with dread. One fateful evening, tension crackled in the air, settling heavily around her as she cradled her children, Alex and Mia, close. The cursed painting loomed behind them, the saint's eyes hollow and dark, seeming to pulse with malevolence. A whisper slithered through the room, you should have never looked. The walls trembled as shadows thickened, closing in on her family. Julie's heart pounded violently in her chest. There was no turning back. A battle was about to unfold, and the fate of her children rested in her trembling hands as they faced the darkness creeping closer, ready to devour them. What would she do? Julie squared her shoulders, rising from the couch like a soldier preparing for battle. The flickering light of the single lamp cast unsettling shadows that danced around them, twisting into grotesque shapes. Stay close to me, she instructed, her voice shaking despite her effort to sound steady. She glanced at Alex, who clutched a stuffed bear tight to his chest, his large eyes reflecting a mix of fear and confusion. Mia's tiny fingers found her mother's hand, clutching it fiercely. As the oppressive silence hung heavy, Julie fought to keep her sanity intact. It's just the painting, she muttered under her breath, though the words felt hollow. The saint's gaze seemed to pierce through her, as if judging her decisions, weighing the worth of her very essence. A guttural whisper suddenly shattered the stillness, why do you resist? Heart racing, Julie spun toward the source of the voice. Shadows writhed, twisting and pulling at the edges of her vision. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She gritted her teeth, willing herself not to succumb to fear. This ends now. She shouted, her voice firm, attempting to shield her children with the force of her determination. Alex whimpered softly, eyes wide in disbelief, while Mia squeezed her mother's hand even tighter, sensing the chilling grip of dread that slithered through the air. Gathering her courage, Julie approached the cursed painting. Each step felt like an eternity, her legs heavy like lead, vibrating with every thumping heartbeat. "Show yourself," she demanded, her voice strong despite the trembling in her hands. Nothing but silence answered, thick and suffocating. Suddenly, she felt the temperature drop. A cold wind swirled through the living room, ruffling papers atop the coffee table, whispering secrets that only the dark could understand. "You think you can control it?" The voice echoed again, now laced with a mocking tone that slithered into her mind. Julie clutched her children tighter, pushing back against the tide of despair creeping in. "I won't let you. I will protect them." Rage surged through her, clashing violently with the engulfing dread. She reached out, fingers brushing the surface of the painting. It felt almost alive, pulsing beneath her touch. Then, a flash of horror. The eyes of the saint flared to life, a grotesque twinkle that pulled sweat from her brow. Julie gasped as her vision warped, colors swirling. Images flooded her mind, pain, betrayal, screams echoing through the halls of the church. Faces twisted in suffering, huddled masses consumed by darkness. She staggered back, fighting the vertigo. "What are you?" she cried. An echo of those lost, the voice hissed, venomous and slippery. "You share the burden now." A sense of impending doom settled heavily in her chest. Julie's fingers trembled as she snatched a nearby candle, holding it in defiance against the whispers weaving around her. Just then, the shadows lunged forward, an unfathomable darkness spilling from the painting, writhing like a living creature. Desperation clawed at her throat as she screamed, "No!" But the shadows lunged at her children, snaking toward them with hunger, coiling, suffocating. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from the candle, illuminating the room with an ethereal glow that pushed the encroaching dark back into the corners of the room. The shadows hissed and recoiled. Julie sucked in a breath, eyes wide at the sight. Her heart was a wild drum, pounding in sync with the flickering flame. "We can fight this," she urged to her children, hope spilling into her voice. Yet even as she spoke, she felt a chilling ripple, a pulse of power that seemed to stretch across the room. Within the light, the shadows did not vanish but writhed, more alive than ever. An unsettling realization washed over her. They were simply waiting. The whispers crescendoed, rising to a fever pitch as the temperature dropped further still. Julie's resolve wavered. What had she begun? What had her curiosity unleashed upon her family? And then, the light flickered. As the shadows flickered back to life, Julie's heart raced with anticipation. What would she do next? What was hidden beyond the veil of the painting's surface? The moment hung heavy in the air, laden with the weight of choices yet to be made. A low growl reverberated through the air, growing stronger as the shadows twisted and contorted. Julie's grip on the candle tightened, the flickering flame casting erratic light that painted her children's terrified faces in stark relief. "Stay close," she gasped, as the chill clawed at her skin. The shadows shifted again, their forms blurring, merging into dread-filled specters that seemed to beckon her forward. "We need to get out of here." "No!" Alex cried, his voice trembling as he buried his face in Mia's hair, the stuffed bear forgotten. Mia looked up, wide-eyed, as the shadows danced closer, feeding on their fear. The light from the candle quivered, and flashes of pale fingers reached towards them, desperate and clutching. Julie stepped back, heart racing. What power connected her with this cursed painting? A scream echoed in her mind, and she stumbled, falling back against the couch. This isn't real. This is just a trick. She wanted to believe it, she needed to believe it. Suddenly, the light surged, brighter than before, as if responding to her defiance. The shadows screeched, twisting into wretched faces of the lost, of those long forgotten. They moaned in sorrow, entwined in a dance of despair that spiraled around the room. "Join us," they whispered in unison, voices dripping with despair and sweet temptation. "No!" Julie screamed, voice cracking. The words tore from her throat as its grip tightened, darkness tugging at her very core. She had to fight, she had to resist. "You won't take my family." Instinctively, she waved the candle, the wax dripping down her fingers, burning her skin yet grounding her in reality. Each heartbeat felt like the last, thumping frantically in her chest as she desperately focused on that flickering light. "Look!" whispered the shadows, pointing with ethereal whispers to the eyes of the saint, which pulsed more fiercely now. They promised answers, solace from the torment. "Let us show you the truth." Alex's tiny whimper broke through the cacophony, and in that moment, Julie remembered why she fought. "Stay with me," she pleaded, backing toward the window, desperate for any sign of light outside, an escape. The looming dark encircled them, closing in. The shadows twisted, rising to take shapes that were almost human. Faces emerged, faces that she recognized, twisted with pain, eyes wide with terror. Family, friends, each one etched in misery, their lost lives echoing through her mind. "What do you want from us?" she cried, panic rising. "We want your light," they hissed. The shadows surged forward, a tide of darkness, hungry and relentless. Julie turned and bolted for the door. "Run!" she shouted, "now!" Mia screamed, dragging Alex in her wake, frantically bumping into furniture as they raced toward safety. But Julie felt it, the overwhelming presence pushing against her, tugging at her very soul and tempting her to surrender. The light flickered wildly before her, silently warning her of the encroaching darkness. Just as they reached the door, a vile howl erupted. The shadows lunged again, this time not against her, but toward her children. No. Time slowed as fear clenched at her throat. Desperation clawed within her, raw and primal. Julie swung the candle, pouring every ounce of her will into that glow, screaming, "Get back! You won't take them!" The shadows hesitated, a moment of stillness, and then surged, howling in frustration. "You're too late," they echoed, almost gleeful in their victory. "Enough!" Julie roared, taking a bold step forward as the flame blazed fiercely, igniting a new surge of strength. The darkness shrank back again, but two close whispers echoed in her ear. "This is just the beginning." With one last heave, she swung the candle toward the painting, its glow illuminating the grotesque figures trapped within. Would her sacrifice be enough? Would the lies unravel? Just then, the eyes of the saint dimmed once more, but now they held something different, fear, perhaps. And in that moment of twisted perception, Julie realized the painting was alive. But was it her salvation or ultimate doom? As the shadows writhed, coiling around her legs, she turned to see Alex and Mia frozen, fear reflected in their eyes. The doorway loomed ahead, but revealing the truth came with unbearable price. Could she escape before it was too late? In that crucial instant, a jolting crack echoed through the room. The painting trembled, and the eyes flickered, igniting a new wave of darkness that surged toward them. What other horrors lay waiting in the dark? The darkness writhing around them thickened, swallowed the candlelight as a wave crashing over a fragile shore. Julie felt its weight press down, constricting her breath like a tightening noose. "Mom!" Alex's voice pierced through the haze of terror. He stood frozen beside Mia, clutching her arm, eyes wide with horror. Their innocence felt like a beacon in this storm of dismay. "Hold on!" Julie shouted, turning back toward the painting. An unseen force pulled at her thoughts, whispering secrets that twisted her heart. "Don't look at it!" she screamed, but it was too late. The children glanced at the ghastly figures writhing within the canvas, mouths open in silent screams. Suddenly, the shadows around them screamed back, an angry chorus that made the stale air vibrate. Julie staggered forward as if pushed by an invisible hand, wanting to cover their eyes but unable to look away from the true horror revealed. "What do you want?" Julie shouted, grasping the candle like a lifeline. "Leave us alone." The shadows coalesced, forming into a single monstrous shape. Its form flickered, shifting between familiar faces, each twisted, tormented. Julie's heart clutched painfully in her chest. "No. Please." She begged, realizing they were not just spirits, they were victims, lost souls trapped in a purgatory created by the very painting she stood before. The saintly figure at the heart of the chaos emerged muddied with despair, eyes now hollow sockets. In a moment of distorted clarity, Julie understood the painting wasn't merely a portal, it was a prison for the damned. Her blood ran cold. "I want to be your next victim." With renewed determination, Julie steadied the candle, feeling the warmth beneath her trembling fingers. "You can have my light, but not my children." The flame flickered again, brightening as she poured every ounce of love and defiance into it. The room spun wildly as shadows surged toward her, their cries echoing like a distant storm. The candle's glow pushed against the darkness, illuminating the hideous forms. The shadows shrieked, seeming to burn under the brilliance of her light. Mia darted forward, tugging at Julie's pant leg. "Mom, do something." Her voice was a desperate melody, pulling Julie back from the brink of despair. A torrent of fury and protective love surged through Julie, igniting a blazing resolve. "Face me," she bellowed, planting her feet firmly. She stepped toward the painting, the twisted souls screaming for release, demanding her surrender. "Let them go," she demanded, raising the candle high, fire dancing like a battle standard. In an instant, the room fell silent, the shadows halting mid-motion, frozen in a flicker of indecision. "Join us, join the light," came the chilling whispers, voices mingling with the sound of sinister laughter as if the darkness itself anticipated her answer. "No!" Julie roared, her voice echoing with authority, pushing back against their ugly pull. "You'll not strip my family from me." The candle blazed with ferocity, and the shadows, sensing the threat to their lair, recoiled, shrieking in unison, a chaotic choir echoing with malice. They clawed at each other as if in confusion, as if unsure of their power now that Julie had found hers. Through the turmoil, a shard of light caught Alex's wide eyes, glistening with hope. "Mom! Stay together!" she barked. They could escape. They had to. The doorway loomed behind them, a promise of freedom veiled in uncertainty. Yet, as they maneuvered toward it, unfamiliar shadows ignited at the corners of her eyes. A voice clawed at the edge of her consciousness, "You can't escape what's inside you." Was the darkness merely a reflection of her own fears, the endless whispers of guilt, grief, and despair? With a terrified glance back at the wild chaos, the certainty of danger surged in her gut. The shadows were reforming, twisting into an impossible creature, something that was no longer vaguely human, but something far more sinister. In the breath of the very next moment, the candle flickered dangerously, and a deafening crack echoed through the room. "Mom! Look out!" Just as Julie turned, something cold as ice twisted around her ankle, pulling her down. The shadows howled, eager for her surrender. Would she succumb to their grip or find a way to sever the bond that tied her to this nightmare? The darkness surged forward, embracing everything, and Julie could barely hold on to the light. What secrets would she uncover if she fell? The cold tendrils tightened their grip around Julie's ankle, dragging her down into the suffocating darkness. Panic surged through her veins like ice water, and she fought against the unseen force, clawing at the air as the shadows closed in. Mia screamed, the sound shrill and raw. "Mom!" Her small hands tugged at Julie's other leg, trying desperately to hold her mother's weight. "Let me go!" Julie roared, adrenaline flooding her body. The candlelight flickered wildly, its golden glow struggling against the encroaching shadows that were thick as smoke. But within that light, she saw flickers of humanity, the lost souls reflected in the wavering flame. They were reaching, pleading, flickering like fireflies caught in a jar. "Mom! Help!" Alex's voice trembled, shaking her free from the chaotic whirl of her thoughts. She gritted her teeth, focus narrowing to her children, the softness of their touch anchoring her in the storm. With a fierce resolve, she yanked her leg free, the icy grasp breaking like a brittle string, and scrambled to her feet just in time to see a monstrous shadow slink away from her. It was a patchwork of faces, contorted in screams of despair, a grotesque collage of the damned, their features flickering in and out of existence. "Not today!" she yelled, hoisting the candle higher. The darkness recoiled again, the contrast between light and shadow stark, but the battle was far from over. "Through the door!" Julie shouted, pointing fiercely at the exit, the wooden frame somehow growing larger, more inviting but also fraught with the unknown. The children needed to understand, they had to feel this urgency. "Run!" The shadows seemed to pulse and sway, angering at her command. They dove towards the children, tendrils lashing out like whips, desperate to snatch them back. "Alex! Mia! Move!" Julie's voice sliced through the tension, cutting through the near ethereal cries echoing from the painting. She pushed forward, thrusting the flickering candle in front of her like a sword, the flame licking at the darkness threatening to engulf them. As if seizing a sudden burst of instinct, Mia dashed toward the door. Alex hesitated, fear clouding his young eyes. "Mom! Now!" she screamed, forcing her voice to rise above the chaos. With a last desperate glance back at her mother, Alex bolted after his sister. Julie felt a jolt of relief. But it was short-lived. The darkness roared back, swirling like a storm. The candle's light flickered low, for a moment, it seemed as if it might die. No. Her heart raced. The shadows lunged again, a howling wave. Julie fell into a desperate rhythm, pumping her arm as she moved toward the door. "You will not take us." In a final rush, she barreled forward, the light barely illuminating the threshold as she reached out for the children. "Come back. Grab my hand." Just as she reached the doorframe, an agonizing screech tore through the air. The horrid visage of the creature, fully formed now, emerged from the darkness, its eyes burning with unholy light. Its mouth opened wider than any human could, revealing rows of jagged teeth. "Join us," it hissed, its voice laced with dread and promise. With a primal scream, Julie threw the candle directly at the creature. The flame burst forth, splaying radiant sparks as the candle shattered, illuminating the dark with brilliant energy. The infernal face recoiled, shadows retreating, but the light waned as the candle dissolved into nothing. In that fleeting moment, she dove toward the children, grappling for their hands. As her fingers wrapped around Mia's and Alex's, the door slammed shut behind them, the sound echoing like a death knell. But something was wrong. Cold terror seeped into her bones. The warmth of the light extinguished, leaving them in the gaze of another darkness, one that felt not just external but internal. "We have to get out!" Mia frantically cried, her voice trembling, echoing Julie's own fear, but here, surrounded by silence, they stood on the precipice of something far more sinister than what lay behind them. "Mom," Alex whispered, his eyes wide as he looked into the void beyond the door's threshold. "What if it follows us?" Chilling shadows danced in the corners of the room, whispering again of long-buried secrets, lurking nightmares. "What if it's already here?" The air thickened, an eerie stillness wrapping around them as new fears began to pulse like dark tendrils creeping toward the heart of their family. What awaited them beyond the shadows? What secrets lay hidden, just waiting to ensnare them all? The darkness pressed on all sides, heavy and thick, wrapping around Julie and her children like a wet blanket. Every breath felt labored, as if the very air had turned against them. The silence was deafening, broken only by the soft whimpering of Mia, who clutched her mother's hand as if it was a lifeline. "Stay close," Julie murmured, forcing herself to project calmness despite the tempest raging inside her. The whisper of shadows curled around them, coiling tighter. Moments felt infinite, stretching and distorting time. Alex stood wide-eyed, his tiny frame quivering. "What do we do? How do we get out of here?" Julie's mind raced, desperately searching for answers. "We need to find another exit, anything." She strained her ears, listening intently. The shadows stirred, murmurs threading through the stillness, hushed laughter echoing, spinning webs of dread. Each sound felt personal, directed at them, taunts from the abyss, assuring that escape was futile. "Mom." Mia's voice was thin, like a fragile tune in a cacophony. "What if it wants to keep us here? Forever?" She felt a fresh rush of fear claw through her veins. "No. We won't let that happen." But deep down, doubts churned. The edges of reality seemed to fray, the chilling thought crept in that perhaps they were already trapped. Then, from the murky depths of the silence, a faint glow emerged. It was slight but enough to catch Julie's attention. "Look," she said, pointing, hope igniting in her chest. "Over there." The light flickered and pulsed, weaving between the dark shapes that twisted in the corners. It beckoned to them, a siren call that made her heart race. As they moved, the shadows seemed to push against them, a living wall of night trying to stifle any flicker of hope. "Don't let go," Julie warned, squeezing her children's hands tighter. The warmth of their skin felt like a stark contrast against the icy grasp of the shadows. They pressed forward, inching closer to the glow. But as they approached, the light revealed something that made Julie's breath catch in her throat, a wall of grotesque faces, each one contorted in eternal agony, screaming silently against the fabric of existence. Embedded in the walls, they were trapped, mocking reflections of their greatest fears. "Mom! What is that?" Alex stumbled back, eyes wide with terror. "Just keep moving," she ordered, feeling the panic rise in her throat. She needed to shield them from this torment, this reminder of the darkness that hungered for their despair. The light, now flickering more weakly, pulled them as if it were alive. Julie felt the cold sweat trickling down her back, the hairs on her arms standing on end. With each passing moment, the air thickened around them. The walls seemed to shift, closing in, as if conspiring to smother their escape. Then came a whisper, a voice low and creeping, slithering through their thoughts with an intimate familiarity. "Can you feel it? The darkness inside you, it's calling." Julie squeezed her eyes shut, shaking her head violently. "No. We are not like them." She fought back the encroaching despair, her breath coming in harsh gasps. Mia gasped, "But Mom, what if it's true?" The ground beneath them trembled, pulsating with a malignant life of its own. Shadows twisted and spun wildly, laughter echoing in the confines of their minds. Panic surged, the room threatened to swallow them whole. "Run!" Julie shouted, the word breaking free from her lips like a scream. They bolted towards the faint light, desperation fueling every stride. But could they outrun the darkness creeping at their heels? As they dashed, the faces in the walls shifted, providing glimpses of terror, a lifetime of regret smoldering behind vacant eyes. They could feel the warmth of the light fading as the chilling shadows wrapped themselves around them like tightening coils. "Where do we go?" Alex cried, his voice fracturing under fear. "Here. I saw something," Mia yelled, pointing toward a small crack in the wall where the light flickered through. With renewed hope, they surged forward, their hearts pounding in unison. But as they reached for the crack, an ominous voice rumbled behind them, a promise laced with malice: "You can't hide, you can't run away, you belong to us." They froze, dread crawling its way back up to the surface, darkness licking at their heels. Julie felt it seep into her bones, chilling her to the core. What awaited them beyond the light? Would they be swallowed by the shadows, or would the truth reveal itself just out of reach? As the laughter swelled and the shadows writhed, they knew they had only just begun to uncover the layers of horror that awaited. The crack in the wall pulsed with a reluctant light, flickering like the last breath of a dying star. Julie's heart raced as she felt the suffocating terror pulling at every part of her. We have to go now," she shouted, her voice fractured with desperation as she reached for the opening, her fingers stretching. With their hands intertwined, Julie pushed Mia and Alex forward, urging them closer to the sliver of hope. The shadows around them shifted, dark tendrils reaching out as if to snatch them back. The giggles morphed into sinister cackles, resonating through the void. Foolish mortals, a chorus chided. You think you can run? Don't listen. Keep going. She yelled, battling against the incantations clawing at her mind. The crack was narrow, unsettlingly so, as if it were designed to trap or crush them. As they edged closer, the light intensified, revealing textured, swirling colors that glimmered like polished jewels, enticing yet ominous. But just as quickly, it dimmed. A clamping pressure built around them, as if the wall were squeezing their very essence. Julie felt the drag of exhaustion seeping into her bones, fueled by an all-consuming dread. Mia screamed, pulling back suddenly, her small feet anchored to the floor. Mom! I can't, her face twisted with raw fear. Please, Mia. We have to. Julie gritted her teeth, but panic closed in, causing a lump to rise in her throat. We need to move. Now. In that agonizing moment of hesitation, shadows lurked, turning sympathetic whispers into mocking taunts. A chill ran through her, shaking her resolve. You'll never be free, they cooed, every word clawing at her sanity. You belong to us. You always have. In a sudden surge of panic, Julie yanked Alex forward, melding them against the wall as they pushed together toward the crack. Hold on. She cried, the desperation pouring from her like a tide. Mia's reluctance turned into sheer terror. Mom! She cried, her voice piercing the veil of shadows. What if we can't fit? As if in reply, the space around them shuddered, the darkness convulsing as if excited by their fear. Julie inhaled sharply, eyes wide with determined horror. We will. Just trust me. Close your eyes and Mom. Alex's voice broke, and she felt his grip falter. Before she could respond, an icy wind swept through the crevice, swirling like a tornado. It roared, drowning out even their frantic breaths. Then, she felt it, the pull. An invisible hand grinding against them, trying to hoist them back into the abyss. Run! Now! Julie screamed, shoving her children forward with everything she had. They stumbled, scrambling, eyes wide with fear, starting to fit through the opening. No, 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 please let this work. Julie braced herself, feeling the tug of ominous forces clawing at her limbs, trying to draw her back into the night. Shadows lashed against her, carving into her skin. Gritting her teeth, she literally forced her body into the crack, dirt scraping against flesh, but she couldn't stop now. She could hear the sinister laughter, the haunting cacophony screaming to swallow them whole. Suddenly, Mia let out a shriek of anguish that echoed through the darkness just as Julie felt herself glide through the crevice, her body colliding with the cold, unyielding ground on the other side. A moment later, she turned, frantic, fear surging anew. Where's Mia? Alex whimpered beside her, frozen in horror. She's not here. A chilling realization descended, a wave of panic. No Mia. Julie looked back at the crack, desperation clawing at her throat. The opening pulsed, darkness spilling through, beckoning her to return. The air was thick, redolent with dread as she fell to her knees, tears pouring down as she pressed against the wall. I can't leave her. I can't. A soft giggle erupted from the depths of the darkness, colder than ice. Did you really think you could escape? She was always ours, and just like that, the light began to fade, and Julie felt the walls grip her tighter, a malign embrace crushing her spirit. No. She screamed, but the shadows were all-consuming, blurring her vision, enveloping her mind. Mia. Alex. I'm coming. But would she? As the darkness loomed, Julie realized there was no promise of salvation anymore. Only the haunt of their laughter echoed in her ears, stripping her of every hope. What awaited them in that suffocating void? Would she find Mia, or fall victim to the abyss herself? The darkness whispered promises of despair as she dashed deeper into the unknown, and just before everything went black, a thought gripped her. Was this the end, or merely the beginning of unearthly horrors yet to come? Darkness enveloped Julie, tightening around her like a vice. Terrifying whispers clawed at her thoughts, wrapping her in tendrils of despair. She had lost Mia, her precious girl, and though Alex crouched beside her, his eyes wide and terrified, the looming dread echoed around them. Mom?" Alex's voice trembled, breaking through the haze. "What happened? Where's Mia?" "I don't know." Julie gasped, panic bubbling in her throat. Her heart raced, blood pounding in her ears. "We have to find her. We can't let her stay there." The crack pulsed ahead, a portal draped in ominous shadows. Cold air poured from it, swirling around them, taunting and beckoning. The chorus of laughter that surrounded them crescendoed, mocking their panic with a chilling harmony. Julie rose to her feet, adrenaline surging through her. "Stay here," she ordered, pressing a finger to her lips. "I'm going to find her. You stay close, okay?" "But Mom, what if stay close?" she snapped, her resolve faltering but not unwinding. She took a deep breath and plunged back toward the crack, her hands outstretched. As she approached, the shadows shifted, coiling in anticipation. The familiar feeling of cold dread gripped her heart, but she couldn't think of that now. "Mia!" she yelled, her voice swallowed by the oppressive darkness. "Mia, answer me." No response. Just the echo of silence that pulled at her sanity. A flicker of despair raced through her. What if the shadows had taken her? Panic surged again as she realized she might be next. "Please, please," she pressed her palms against the wall, feeling its icy texture. The surface quivered beneath her touch as if it were alive, urging her to move deeper into its twisted embrace. Suddenly, a soft whimper broke through the void, so faint that it could be mistaken for a mere figment of her imagination. "Mom, help Mia!" Julie shouted, the sound of her daughter's voice igniting something deep within her. Spurred by a primal instinct, she pushed through the crack, feeling the walls shift as if they were trying to close around her. On the other side, a world twisted in shadows unfurled. The landscape was hauntingly familiar yet unnaturally distorted. Gnarled trees loomed like sentinels, their branches twisted and broken. Puddles of murky water glimmered under a sickly light, reflecting distorted images that sent chills spiraling down her spine. "Mia!" she cried again, trembling with fear. And then she saw her. A small figure curled tightly among the shadows, a faint blue glow outlining her form. But something was wrong. Mia was not alone. Figures prowled around her, hideous shapes cloaked in darkness, their eyes glinting with malice. "Leave her alone." Julie surged forward, her heart thundering as she rushed to her daughter. "Mom!" Mia looked up, eyes wide and glistening with fear. I can't move." The shadows twisted, making it appear as if the ground had come alive, gripping Mia in an eerie embrace. Julie lunged for her, hands grasping out, desperate to pull her free. "Hold on. I'm here. I'm going to get you out." But as she reached for Mia, the shadows lunged, wrapping around Julie's arms, dragging her downward. A growl reverberated from the depths, a voice like thunder booming, "She is ours now. You cannot take her." "No!" Julie screamed, fighting against the inky tendrils gripping her. She looked at Mia, her eyes filled with panic, pleading for help. What was happening? With a surge of strength, whether from desperation or a primal instinct to survive, Julie wrenched herself free for a moment. "I want to leave you," she cried, trying to pull Mia toward her, but the depth of their connection was being severed, like a rope fraying with every futile pull. The laughter returned, mocking and cruel, drowning out Mia's whimpers. "Together or apart, you will never break free," the shadowy voices echoed. "You will never be united, not in this world or the next." Sinking deeper into despair, Julie felt the last of her will slipping away. The darkness was relentless, pulling at her very soul. Could she fight against it? And would she ever see Mia again? With one final charge, Julie lunged again, desperation igniting a flicker of strength. She had to know, was this truly the end? Or could she still possess the will to confront the ancient malice before her? As shadows swirled in a frenzy, Julie prepared for a battle of unfathomable proportions and unseen horrors, knowing the fate of her family hung in the balance. Would she find the strength to save Mia, or would darkness engulf them both forever? The shadows writhed like serpents, coiling tighter around Julie with each desperate attempt to reach her daughter. Panic surged through her limbs, driving her intentions, but the malignant voices echoed louder, drowning her spirit in despair. "You will never win," they hissed, their cold laughter sending shivers crawling down her spine. "Stay back!" Julie shouted, fighting not just against the dark tendrils but against her own fading hope. Her muscles strained, each tug against the shadows feeling like swimming through syrup. The world around her warped, bending and twisting like a carnival mirror reflecting her fear. "Mia!" she cried, the sound raw and strangled. "Please!" But the muffled whimpers of her child echoed back, a haunting reminder of anguish, as if the shadows feasted on Julie's desperation. That a flicker of blue caught her eye, the faint glow that outlined Mia, but it dimmed with every second. Those hideous figures moved closer, their eyes gleaming like polished obsidian, hungry for despair. They encircled Mia like vultures, whispering secrets that darkened the air. For one brief moment, Julie felt the tang of cold resolve settle in her chest. "Fight!" she screamed silently. She couldn't succumb. Not now. Not ever. Gritting her teeth, she focused on her daughter's frightened eyes, the love that burned bright even in the darkness. Mia's face contorted with fear. "Mom! I can't hold on." She trembled violently, her small body pulled deeper into the shadow's grasp. The glow flickered, like a dying star. "Just a little longer." Julie roared, desperation fueling her strength. Summoning every ounce of willpower, she thrust her arm through the inky veil, reaching for Mia. The figures hissed, their mouths stretched into grotesque grins that chilled her to the bone. "She belongs to us. You cannot hope to take what is ours." Their voices blended into a discordant symphony of mockery. "No!" Julie bellowed, and in that moment, something shifted. A pulse of energy thrummed through her, igniting her very core. Bursting forth from the depths of her being, she let out a primal scream that echoed through the shadows, a defiant challenge against their malicious grip. The darkness recoiled slightly, as if her voice had pierced through the oppressive veil. In that moment of vulnerability, she saw it, the faint chance of escape. The shadows trembled, flickers of light breaking through the chaos. "Mia! Grasp my hand!" Julie called, her voice rising with fervor. "You can do it. Just reach for me." Mia's eyes, wide with hope, met her mother's. For a heartbeat, time suspended as Julie watched her daughter's tiny fingers stretch toward the light. Something snapped. The shadows lunged, furious and ravenous. "No!" they shrieked in twisted agony. "This is not over." Julie felt the tendrils straining against her, pulling with all their fury. The darkness rippled, swarming, trying to once more claim what was rightfully theirs. But in that moment of connection, love had forged a link they underestimated, one that burned brighter than despair. "Mia! Now!" The last of her breath exploded in that desperate appeal. In a rush, Mia's hands broke free, grasping her mother's fingers. An electric surge coursed through them, melding their spirits as the shadows writhed in protest. "Pull!" Julie bellowed, summoning every ounce of strength within her. The oppressive weight of shadows intensified, squeezing tighter, yet the bond between them shimmered defiantly against it. Just as it seemed the darkness would devour them both, the shriek of chaos crescendoed, then split apart. There was no time to think, only to act. With a final, primal scream, Julie and Mia shot forward into the light, ripping free from the grasp of the shadows. They landed hard on the ground, breathless and wild-eyed. The haunting laughter faded behind them, but something was wrong. Glancing around, Julie felt a creeping chill skitter down her spine. Where are we?" Mia gasped, her voice quavering, but before Julie could respond, an icy breeze swept through the clearing, whispering between the trees. "Mia! Julie heard it, a familiar voice echoing from somewhere ahead. Not the shadows, not a trick of the mind, a lure beckoning them deeper into the unknown. Mom, I think someone's calling for me. A new chill settled in Julie's gut, but her instinct screamed at her to move forward. What lay ahead was uncertain, but something compelled them. They had escaped one darkness. What might they find next? Would it be salvation or another layer of the abyss? The chilling wind wrapped around Julie and Mia as they stumbled into the new clearing, disoriented and fearful. We have to find Alex, Julie cried, her voice thick with panic. The shadows from which they had just escaped loomed in her mind, clawing at her thoughts, demanding her fear. Stay close, Mia. The landscape shimmered around them, ethereal yet dark, filled with gnarled trees that twisted like skeletal hands reaching for the sky. The atmosphere crackled with tension, almost alive. Every rustle of leaves sent adrenaline surging through Julie's veins. Mom, I'm scared, Mia whispered, her small fingers trembling against her mother's. We won't let anything happen to you, Julie said, swallowing down her own rising terror. We'll find him. Just hold on to my hand. But as they moved deeper into the ominous shadows, Julie's heart sank. The insistent whisper of the wind felt like a warning, chilling her to the bone. Mia. A voice called faintly, echoing through the distance. It pierced through the unusual silence, each syllable laced with urgency. Mia. It was Alex. The sound filled Julie with hope, but the darkness flickered, threatening to snuff it out. That way, she urged, pointing into a dense thicket that seemed to pulsate with an unnatural life. Together they raced through the underbrush, limbs stretching, hope propelling them as the echo of Alex's shouts guided their hurried steps. The shadows writhed restlessly around them, like monstrous spirits clawing at their heels, hungry for despair. Just a little further, she urged, her fear morphing into fierce determination. Mom. Alex's voice rang out clearer now, desperation threading through it. She pushed harder, not looking back as the shadows lurked, their haunting laughter rippling behind them. Suddenly, they broke through to a clearing illuminated by a stark light that shimmered like a beacon. It was ethereal, misty, and made the dark feel less oppressive. And there was Alex, standing in the center, fear etched into his features, his small form tense with dread. Mom! He shouted again, arms outstretched. Mia! Go to him. Now! Julie shouted, her voice a rallying cry. Mia sprinted forward, breaking through the final barrier, slamming into Alex. Relief surged through Julie, and tears rolled down her cheeks as she watched them embrace. We found you were together now, Mia said, her voice small but fierce, but the brief moment of joy was undercut by an otherworldly chill. Julie turned to the dark edges of the woods, where shadows gathered like storm clouds. An oppressive anger erupted, swirling towards them. They don't want us to leave, she breathed, understanding now that the beasts hungered still. It was not just after her, it wanted them all. Mia and Alex stood wide-eyed, trembling in the face of inevitable darkness. Mom, what do we do? Alex asked, clutching Mia tightly. Each child's face illuminated by the hard light reminded Julie just how precious their lives were. With a fierce resolve igniting within, Julie stepped protectively in front of them, holding her ground. We'll face this together, she declared, emboldened by love for her children. We've fought too hard to get here. In response, the shadows twisted closer like fingers of an unseen hand, curling and weaving around her. You will join us, they hissed, seductive whispers trailing off like smoke. No. Julie's voice rang with defiance. She felt a flare ignite from within, a warmth building in her chest, radiating outward. She held her arms wide, the light inside her brightening with every thundering heartbeat. The shadows halted, their movement faltering. The light they echoed, surprised and recoiling as if burned. You cannot hope to wield it. Watch me. Julie exclaimed, tapping into that raw energy, summoning her power from the depths of her being. She felt like a conduit, a bridge. Anything was possible in that moment. You cannot have my family. The shadows screeched, a cacophony of rage washing over them. But the light continued to grow, blazing brighter and brighter until it exploded outward, a radiant force pushing back the very fabric of darkness. Mia and Alex joined their mother. They raised their hands high, a united front. Together. Julie shouted, feeling their small hands connect with her own. We are stronger than you. With that proclamation, the shadows erupted in a violent tempest. Darkness caved in as the brilliant light surged forth, illuminating the forest in vibrant colors. The shadows screeched and fought, but light consumed them. It radiated, sweeping through the trees, wrapping around the edges of their confined space, and illuminating the horrifying figures trapped in the dark. Faces etched in pain melted away, dissolving into the light until nothing but shimmering embers remained. No. You can't. They wailed, but their despair was powerless against the burgeoning strength of familial love. With one final purging surge, the shadows dissolved entirely. In their place, a soft tranquility settled over the stillness of the forest, darkness lifted, and the air felt lighter, sweet like spring rain. The three stood together, breathless and panting, sunlight streaming through the trees, comforting and warm, like a hug after a long, harsh winter. Is it over? Mia asked, her voice small but filled with a hint of wonder. I think it is, Julie said, heart swelling with hope. But we can't forget what we learned. We will always have to be vigilant. Together, they took a step forward, gripping each other's hands tightly, freed from the shadows and exalted by their victory. As they emerged from the forest into the light of day, transformed and renewed, Julie vowed never to take a single moment for granted. The shadows could come again, but they would face them, together. No matter what, she whispered, feeling the warmth of her children beside her, we will never be apart again. And so they walked onward, knowing that the light they shared within themselves was enough to conquer any darkness life would hurl at them. If you're with us all the way to this incredible resolution, you need to subscribe now. Don't miss a moment of these exclusive stories. Hit that subscribe button immediately. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm so we can keep bringing these tales to you. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and reactions about the ending. How do you feel after this nail-biting adventure? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is everything.